10 seconds. That's how long the fix takes. I'm going to show you exactly what it is before this video ends. 10 seconds. Every morning in your kitchen. Curious. But first, I need you to go to your kitchen cabinet. Mentally or physically. It doesn't matter. And I want you to picture the bottle of cooking oil you used last. Was it canola, vegetable oil, corn oil, maybe a heart-healthy blend? If you're over 60 and you're cooking with any of those, you are pouring inflammation directly into your bloodstream, every meal, every day, and that inflammation is doing something to your blood sugar that your doctor has never connected. Surprised. There are 5 cooking oils, all labeled healthy, all recommended by dietitians, all sitting on shelves in the heart-healthy section, that are silently destroying your blood sugar control after 60. I'm going to rank them, worst to most dangerous. And then I'm going to show you the 3 oils you should be using instead. That 10-second fix I mentioned, it's at the end. And once you see it, you'll wonder why nobody told you sooner, okay? Before I name the 5 oils, you need to understand why cooking oils affect blood sugar. Because on the surface, it doesn't make sense. Oils are fat. Fat doesn't contain sugar. So how does a cooking oil, which is 100% fat, 0 carbohydrates, 0 sugar, affect your blood sugar at all? This is the question I get constantly. And it's a great question, because the answer reveals something about blood sugar that most people, including most doctors, don't fully appreciate. Here's the chain. Follow me on this. Your blood sugar isn't just controlled by how much sugar you eat. It's controlled by how well your cells respond to insulin. That's called insulin sensitivity. When your cells are sensitive to insulin, when they respond properly, glucose gets pulled out of your blood and into your muscles and organs efficiently. Blood sugar stays normal. But when your cells become resistant to insulin, when they stop responding to the signal, glucose stays trapped in your blood. Your pancreas pumps out more insulin to compensate. Your blood sugar rises anyway. And the cycle gets worse over time. Now here's where cooking oils enter the picture. There are 2 types of polyunsaturated fats that matter here: omega-3 fatty acids and omega-6 fatty acids. Both are essential. Your body needs both. But the ratio between them is critical. For most of human history, tens of thousands of years, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 in the human diet was approximately 1:1, maybe 2:1 at most, equal or close to equal. Today, in the average American diet, that ratio is between 15:1 and 20:1. Some estimates put it as high as 25:1, 15 to 25 times more omega-6 than omega-3. Why? Because of cooking oils. Specifically, the industrial seed oils that became the dominant cooking fats in America starting in the 1950s and 1960s. Soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil. These oils are overwhelmingly omega-6. And here's what excess omega-6 does inside your body. It feeds the production of pro-inflammatory molecules called eicosanoids. Specifically, a type called prostaglandins. These molecules activate your immune system's inflammatory pathways. Chronically, every day, every meal cooked in these oils adds to the fire. And chronic inflammation, I need you to hear this clearly, is now recognized as one of the primary drivers of insulin resistance. A landmark review published in the journal Nature Medicine. This was a major paper that shifted how researchers think about metabolic disease. Established that low-grade chronic inflammation directly causes insulin resistance in adipose tissue, liver, and muscle. The inflammatory molecules physically interfere with insulin, signaling pathways inside your cells. They block the signal, like static on a radio. The insulin is there, the receptor is there, but the message doesn't get through. Because inflammation is jamming it. And where is that inflammation coming from? Multiple sources. But one of the biggest, and one of the most controllable, is the cooking oil you pour into your pan every single day. Now, there's a second mechanism, and this one is specific to seniors over 60. After 60, your body's ability to resolve inflammation decreases. When you're young, your immune system can ramp up inflammation to fight an infection or heal an injury, and then ramp it back down quickly. You recover. The inflammation disappears. But after 60, that resolution phase slows down. Inflammation lingers longer, clears more slowly, becomes sticky, persistent. What researchers call inflammaging, the combination of aging and chronic low-grade inflammation. So when you pour omega-6 heavy oil into your pan at age 65, the inflammatory response is larger and longer lasting than the same oil would cause at age 35. Your body starts the fire just as easily, but it can't put it out as fast. And here's the part that connects directly to your blood sugar meter. That lingering inflammation doesn't just float around in your blood doing nothing. It specifically targets the insulin receptors on your muscle cells, your fat cells, and your liver cells. The inflammatory molecules, TNF-alpha, IL-6, C-reactive protein, physically attach to the signaling pathways inside those cells and block the insulin signal from getting through. Think of it like this. Your insulin is a key. Your cell's receptor is a lock. When the key turns, the door opens, and glucose enters the cell. Simple, but inflammation puts gum in the lock. The key is still there. The lock is still there. But the door won't open. Glucose piles up in your blood. Your pancreas makes more keys, more insulin, but the gum, the inflammation, keeps blocking the mechanism. So your blood sugar climbs, and climbs. And your doctor says your insulin isn't working well enough, and adds more medication. But the medication doesn't remove the gum. It just makes louder keys, more insulin, stronger drugs. The underlying inflammation persists, because you're still pouring the same omega-6 heavy oil into your pan every night. Still feeding the fire, still gunking up the locks. And nobody, not your doctor, not your dietitian, not the label on the bottle, connects the oil in your cabinet to the number on your meter. That's the mechanism. Now let me show you the 5 worst offenders. Number 5, canola oil. And I'm starting here because canola oil is probably the most controversial item on this list. Because canola has been marketed aggressively for decades as one of the healthiest cooking oils on the planet. Low in saturated fat, high in omega-3s, heart healthy. The American Heart Association includes canola oil on their list of recommended cooking fats. It's in hospital kitchens. It's in school cafeterias. It's the default oil in most healthy restaurants. So what's the problem? 3 things. First, the omega-3 claim is misleading. Yes, canola oil does contain some alpha-linolenic acid. That's the plant-based omega-3. About 9 to 11% of canola oil's fat content is ALA. That sounds good, but the omega-6 content is approximately 19 to 21%. So the actual omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in canola oil is about 2 to 1. That's not terrible on its own. But here's the catch. The ALA in canola oil is extremely fragile. It oxidizes, goes rancid, when exposed to heat, light, or air. And what do you do with cooking oil? You heat it. In an open pan, under a kitchen light. A study published in the journal Food Chemistry tested the stability of fatty acids in canola oil during cooking. They found that the omega-3 content degraded significantly during normal stovetop cooking. By the time the oil reached standard frying temperature, around 350 to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, a substantial portion of the ALA had oxidized. What you're left with is predominantly omega-6 plus oxidized omega-3 byproducts. And oxidized omega-3 isn't just neutral, it's actively harmful. Lipid oxidation products, aldehydes specifically, are toxic to cells. They damage cell membranes. They trigger, you guessed it, inflammation. So canola oil starts with a decent omega-6 to omega-3 ratio. But by the time you actually cook with it, the ratio shifts dramatically toward omega-6 dominance, and you've added oxidized byproducts on top. Second problem, the processing. Canola oil doesn't come from pressing a canola seed the way olive oil comes from pressing an olive. The extraction process involves hexane, an industrial chemical solvent. The oil is extracted, deodorized, bleached, and refined at high temperatures before it ever reaches the bottle. By the time you buy it, it's been chemically processed through multiple industrial steps that strip away protective compounds and create trace levels of trans fats. A study published in the journal Environmental Sciences Europe found detectable levels of trans fats in commercially refined canola oils, even though the label said 0 grams trans fat. How? Because the FDA allows manufacturers to list trans fat as 0 if it's below 0.5 grams per serving. So, a bottle of canola oil with 0.4 grams of trans fat per tablespoon legally says 0 trans fat on the label. But if you use that oil every day, 3 tablespoons across breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're getting 1.2 grams of hidden trans fat daily. From an oil marketed as heart-healthy and trans fat is the single most damaging fat for insulin resistance ever studied. A review published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition concluded that trans fatty acid intake was significantly and positively associated with markers of insulin resistance and risk of type 2 diabetes. Even at low levels, there is essentially no safe threshold. Third problem, and this is specific to seniors. Canola oil consumption has been linked in animal studies to increased amyloid plaque formation and worsened memory performance. A 2017 study published in Scientific Reports from researchers at Temple University found that mice on a canola oil-enriched diet showed significant worsening in working memory and increased amyloid beta formation in the brain compared to controls. Now, is that conclusive for humans? No, animal studies are not human studies. But when you combine the oxidation issues, the hidden trans fats, the industrial processing, and the early neurological signals, canola oil earns its spot on this list. And here's the kitchen table reality. Canola oil is in everything. It's the default oil in commercially prepared foods. If you eat at a restaurant, they're using canola. If you buy a frozen dinner, it's made with canola. If you grab a bag of chips that says baked, not fried, check the ingredients. Canola oil. The exposure isn't just what you pour from the bottle. It's the accumulated load across every prepared food you eat. But canola is number 5, the least dangerous on this list, because at least it has some omega-3, even if most of it gets destroyed during cooking. The next 4 oils don't even have that going for them. Number 4, corn oil. Now, if you're over 60, you probably grew up with corn oil. It was the oil of Middle America, Mazola, the yellow bottle with the corn cob on the label. Your mother cooked with it. Your grandmother cooked with it. It was as American as the corn itself. And for decades, corn oil was specifically recommended for people with high cholesterol. Switch from butter to corn oil, doctors said. It'll lower your cholesterol. And it did. Technically, it does lower LDL cholesterol in some studies. That's true. But here's what they didn't tell you. Lowering cholesterol with corn oil is like putting a fresh coat of paint on a house that's on fire. The number looks better. The underlying damage gets worse. Why? The omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in corn oil is approximately 46 to 1. 46 to 1. Let that register. Your body wants 1 to 1, maybe 2 to 1. Corn oil delivers 46 to 1. That's not a mild imbalance. That's a metabolic assault. And the omega-6 in corn oil is primarily linoleic acid, the form that most readily converts to arachidonic acid in your body. Arachidonic acid is the direct precursor to the most potent inflammatory prostaglandins your immune system produces. So every tablespoon of corn oil is providing your body with the raw material to manufacture inflammation. And your body will use it enthusiastically. A study published in the British Journal of Nutrition compared the inflammatory effects of different dietary oils in human subjects. Diets high in linoleic acid from corn oil showed significantly elevated markers of systemic inflammation, including C-reactive protein and IL-6, compared to diets with equivalent calories from olive oil or fish oil, And here's the blood sugar connection, directly measured. Researchers at the University of California published findings showing that diets high in omega-6 from seed oils led to greater insulin resistance in liver and muscle tissue compared to diets with equal fat content from monounsaturated or omega-3 sources. Same amount of fat, same number of calories, completely different metabolic outcome. The type of oil determined the insulin response. Now let me tell you what happens in a real kitchen. A woman in our community, Margaret, 74, from Indiana, cooked with corn oil exclusively. Had for 40 years. Her grandmother used it. Her mother used it. Margaret used it. Breakfast eggs, dinner stir-fry, Sunday cornbread, made with corn oil naturally. Her A1C had been creeping up for years. 5.9, then 6.1, then 6.3, then 6.5, the diabetic threshold. Her doctor put her on metformin. Margaret was devastated. She ate well. She walked daily. She didn't understand. When we reviewed her diet together, the corn oil jumped out immediately. She was consuming an estimated 3 to 4 tablespoons per day across her cooking. That's over 7 grams of pure omega-6 linoleic acid, feeding an inflammatory cascade that was systematically destroying her insulin sensitivity. Margaret switched to extra virgin olive oil. Same meals, same recipes, just swapped the bottle. Within 3 months, her A1C dropped from 6.5 to 6.1. Her doctor, to his credit, noticed and asked what changed. "I changed my oil," she said. He looked confused. Then he nodded and said, "Well, keep doing that." He didn't explain why it worked. He didn't write down which oil she switched to. He didn't update her diet recommendations. Just keep doing that. But Margaret knew, and now you know too. Corn oil. Number 4, the oil of your grandmother's kitchen that's been quietly fueling your inflammation for decades. Let's keep going. Number 3 is where things start getting personal, because you probably have this one in your cabinet right now. Number 3, vegetable oil. And I put that in quotes because, and this might surprise you, there are no vegetables in vegetable oil. None. Vegetable oil is not made from vegetables. The name is a marketing term, an invention from the early 20th century to make industrial seed oil sound wholesome, nutritious, like you're getting something from a garden. What's actually in the bottle labeled vegetable oil at your grocery store? Soybean oil. Almost always. Sometimes a blend of soybean and canola. Sometimes soybean and corn. But the primary ingredient, usually 80 to 100%, is soybean oil. And soybean oil is the most consumed oil in the United States. By far. Not olive oil. Not coconut oil. Soybean oil. It accounts for approximately 60% of all vegetable oil consumed in America. It's in restaurant fryers, it's in processed foods, it's in baked goods, salad dressings, mayonnaise, crackers, chips, and frozen meals. It is everywhere. The omega-6 to omega-3 ratio in soybean oil, approximately 7 to 1. That's better than corn oil's 46 to 1. So why is it ranked higher, more dangerous? 2 reasons. First, volume. Americans consume vastly more soybean oil than corn oil because it's in everything. The total omega-6 load from soybean oil-based vegetable oil dwarfs any other single dietary source. Researchers at the University of California, Riverside published a remarkable study in 2015 showing that soybean oil consumption in the United States increased over 1,000-fold during the 20th century. 1,000-fold increase. And during that same period, rates of obesity, diabetes, and metabolic syndrome exploded. Correlation isn't causation. I know that. But the researchers didn't stop at correlation. They tested it directly. In animal models, mice fed a diet with soybean oil as the primary fat source developed significantly more obesity, insulin resistance, and fatty liver disease compared to mice-fed equivalent calories from coconut oil or a low-fat diet. The soybean oil group showed the worst metabolic outcomes of any dietary group, worse than the high sugar group. Let me say that again. Soybean oil produced worse metabolic outcomes than a high sugar diet in a controlled study, at the same caloric intake. Now, that's an animal study. Human metabolism is different, but the mechanism, the omega-6 driven inflammation that disrupts insulin signaling, is conserved across mammals. The pathway is the same. Second reason, vegetable oil is more dangerous than corn oil specifically. The health halo effect. Because the label says vegetable, people use it liberally. It's just vegetables, they think. They pour it into the pan without measuring. They fill the fryer. They use it for everything because it's cheap, neutral tasting, and says heart healthy on the bottle. And every extra tablespoon is another 7.7 grams of omega-6 linoleic acid feeding the inflammatory fire. There's a third issue specific to vegetable oil, and it ties back to what I said about canola processing. The hexane extraction, the bleaching, the deodorizing. By the time vegetable oil reaches your shelf, it's been through an industrial chemical process that would horrify you if you saw it. The oil you pour into your pan to cook dinner tonight went through the same chemical refining process used to make paint thinner. Not the same chemicals, but the same category of industrial processing. Hexane extraction, caustic soda refining, bleaching earth, steam deodorization. This is not food production. This is chemical manufacturing. And in that process, trace amounts of hexane remain. The FDA considers these levels safe. But safe, according to the FDA, means won't cause immediate harm in a single serving. Not won't cause cumulative harm over 40 years of daily use. Nobody has studied the long-term effects of trace hexane exposure from daily cooking oil use in people over 60. Nobody. Because there's no profit in conducting that study. And here's the kitchen table reality that really bothers me. Vegetable oil is the cheapest oil on the shelf. It's usually $3 to $4 for a huge bottle. And for seniors on fixed incomes, people watching their budget, counting every dollar, that price matters. They reach for the cheapest bottle because they've been told oil is oil, and it doesn't matter what you cook with as long as it's not butter. So, the people who can least afford the health consequences of chronic inflammation, seniors on fixed incomes with limited access to health care, are the ones most likely to buy the cheapest, most inflammatory oil available, because the system made it the default. The cheapest option is the most damaging option, and nobody told them. A man in our community, Walter, 76, from Arkansas, cooked everything in vegetable oil. Eggs in the morning, grilled cheese at lunch, chicken at dinner. He bought the big 48-ounce bottle from the discount store. $2.79. Lasted about 3 weeks. Walter's A1C was 7.4. He'd been on metformin for 9 years. His doctor had recently added a second medication, a sulfonylurea, because the metformin alone wasn't controlling his numbers anymore. When Walter switched to olive oil, yes, it cost more, about $8 for a bottle that lasted the same 3 weeks. His inflammatory markers dropped measurably at his next blood panel. His CRP went from 4.2 to 2.1 in 4 months. His A1C dropped from 7.4 to 6.8. His doctor, cautiously, reduced the sulfonylurea dose. Walter calculated the math. The olive oil cost him about $5 more per month than the vegetable oil. The sulfonylurea reduction saved him $23 per month in copays. Net savings, $8 per month, plus fewer side effects, plus better blood sugar, plus less inflammation. The cheap oil was the expensive choice. He just couldn't see it until the numbers changed. The fix for vegetable oil is the same as corn oil. Replace it. Entirely. With what? I'll give you the 3 safe alternatives after we finish the countdown. But first, number 2. And this one is the oil that makes me angriest, because the marketing campaign behind it was so successful that it literally changed what an entire generation ate for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Number 2. Margarine and heart-healthy butter, substitutes made from seed oils. And I know, technically, margarine isn't a cooking oil, it's a spread. But it's made from the same oils I've been talking about, soybean, canola, corn, safflower, that have been hydrogenated, partially hydrogenated, or intrasterified, to turn them from liquid into a solid that looks like butter. And the reason I'm putting this at number 2, above the liquid oils themselves, is because of the additional damage that the solidification process causes, and because of the scale of the deception. Let me take you back. In the 1960s and 70s, the American Heart Association launched a campaign to get Americans off butter and onto margarine. The message was clear: saturated fat causes heart disease. Butter is saturated fat. Therefore, butter is dangerous. Switch to margarine, made from heart-healthy vegetable oils. And America listened. By the 1980s, margarine outsold butter. It was in every refrigerator, every hospital, every school. Doctors recommended it. Dietitians required it. It was considered the single most important dietary swap a person could make for heart health. And it was wrong. We now know, from decades of subsequent research, that the trans fats created during partial hydrogenation of vegetable oils were significantly more dangerous than the saturated fat in butter they replaced. Trans fats don't just raise LDL cholesterol, they lower HDL, the protective cholesterol. They increase triglycerides, they promote abdominal fat storage, and they dramatically increase insulin resistance. A major study from the Harvard School of Public Health, the Nurses' Health Study, following over 84,000 women, found that trans fat intake was the single strongest dietary predictor of type 2 diabetes risk. Stronger than sugar, stronger than total fat, stronger than calories. Trans fat, the fat in margarine, was the number 1 dietary risk factor. Now, I know what you're thinking. They got rid of the trans fats. Modern margarine doesn't have trans fat. Partially true. In 2015, the FDA banned partially hydrogenated oils, the primary source of artificial trans fats. Manufacturers reformulated. Modern margarine and butter substitutes no longer contain the same levels of trans fats they did in the 80s and 90s, but, and this is important, the reformulated versions aren't clean either. Many modern margarines use a process called intrasterification instead of hydrogenation. This process rearranges the fatty acid molecules on the glycerol backbone. It changes the physical structure of the fat without technically creating trans bonds. The problem? Intrasterified fats are relatively new in the food supply. The long-term research is thin, but what exists is concerning. A study published in Nutrition and Metabolism found that intrasterified fats reduced HDL cholesterol and impaired glucose metabolism in human subjects compared to unmodified fats. The metabolic disruption was measurable after just 4 weeks, and here's the kitchen reality. Many seniors over 60 are still using margarine out of habit. They switched from butter in the 80s. They never switched back. Even though the science that justified the switch has been thoroughly debunked, the behavior persists. Because changing a 40-year habit requires someone to explicitly tell you, that thing you were told was safe? It wasn't. And the replacement they gave you? That wasn't safe either. I'm telling you now, if you have margarine or a seed oil-based butter substitute in your refrigerator, the kind in the tub, the kind that's soft at room temperature because it's made from liquid oils, you have 2 options. Option 1, switch to real butter, preferably grass-fed butter, which has a better omega-3 to omega-6 ratio and contains conjugated linoleic acid, a fat that has actually been shown in some studies to improve insulin sensitivity. Butter got blamed for 50 years. The blame was wrong. Option 2, switch to ghee, clarified butter. Ghee has an extremely high smoke point, over 450 degrees Fahrenheit, which means it doesn't oxidize during cooking. It's pure butterfat with the milk solids removed, so even lactose-intolerant people can use it. And it contains butyrate, the same short-chain fatty acid I talked about in a previous video that improves insulin sensitivity and gut health. Either way, the margarine goes. Tonight. Into the trash. That's not recycling. That's protection. And I want to say something to those of you who switched from butter to margarine in the 1980s because your doctor told you to. You did the right thing. You listened to the best medical advice available at the time. You trusted the experts. You made the sacrifice. You gave up something you loved, real butter, the taste of your childhood, because you were told it would save your heart. That takes courage. That takes discipline. And I respect it. But the advice was wrong. The experts, operating on incomplete science, funded in part by the vegetable oil industry, made a recommendation that we now know caused more harm than the thing it replaced. Trans fats from margarine drove insulin resistance, cardiovascular inflammation, and metabolic disease in an entire generation. You did nothing wrong. You were given bad information by people you trusted. And the correction has been quiet. No front-page headlines. No public apology from the American Heart Association. No recall. Just a slow, silent shift in the guidelines that most people over 60 never noticed. So I'm saying it clearly. Butter was not the villain. Margarine was not the hero. The whole story was backwards. And you deserved to know that 30 years ago. One oil left, and number one is the oil that will surprise you the most, because it's the one that was specifically, deliberately, and recently marketed to seniors as the healthiest cooking oil for people with blood sugar concerns. Number one, sunflower oil, specifically the high oleic and heart-healthy varieties. And I need to be very precise here, because there are different types of sunflower oil. And the reason this takes the number one spot is not just because of the oil itself, but because of the timing and the target of how it's being marketed right now. Walk into any grocery store in 2026. Go to the cooking oil section. You'll see a growing number of products, chips, crackers, dressings, cooking sprays, that prominently display "made with sunflower oil" on the front of the package. Some of them specifically say "no seed oils" while using sunflower oil, because the marketing world has somehow carved out an exemption for sunflower. As if the sunflower isn't a seed crop. As if the oil isn't extracted using the exact same industrial process as soybean or canola. And now there's a wave of high oleic sunflower oil products hitting the market. These are marketed as having a healthier fatty acid profile, higher in monounsaturated fat, lower in polyunsaturated omega-6. And that is true. High oleic sunflower oil has been bred to contain more oleic acid, the same monounsaturated fat found in olive oil. So what's the problem? The problem is that the high oleic marketing has created a halo around all sunflower oil. And the vast majority of sunflower oil used in food production, in restaurants, in packaged foods, in most bottles on the shelf, is not the high oleic variety. It's conventional sunflower oil. And conventional sunflower oil has an omega-6 to omega-3 ratio of approximately 200 to 1. 200 to 1. That's not a typo. Conventional sunflower oil is approximately 65% linoleic acid, omega-6, with essentially zero omega-3. The ratio is functionally infinite. Corn oil at 46 to 1 seems moderate by comparison. Soybean oil at 7 to 1 seems practically balanced. Sunflower oil makes them both look innocent. And the linoleic acid in sunflower oil is particularly prone to oxidation. A study published in the journal Food Chemistry tested the oxidative stability of various cooking oils at different temperatures. Sunflower oil produced significantly higher levels of lipid peroxidation products, including 4-hydroxynonenal, or HNE, at standard frying temperatures, compared to olive oil, coconut oil, or even canola oil. HNE is not just inflammatory, it's cytotoxic. It kills cells. Research has linked HNE to damage in pancreatic beta cells, the very cells that produce insulin. So, sunflower oil isn't just feeding the inflammatory fire that causes insulin resistance. It may be directly damaging the cells that produce the insulin your body needs to manage blood sugar. A study published in the journal Free Radical Biology and Medicine demonstrated that HNE impairs insulin signaling through direct modification of insulin receptor substrate proteins. The damage was dose-dependent. More HNE exposure, more insulin signaling impairment. But here's why I put sunflower oil at number 1 above everything else. Because of the target audience. Right now, in 2026, there is a massive marketing push to position sunflower oil as the clean alternative to other seed oils. It's appearing in products marketed to health-conscious seniors. Heart-healthy snacks, diabetic-friendly crackers, clean ingredient salad dressings, products that feature a big, friendly sunflower on the label, that look natural, that feel safe. And the people buying these products, disproportionately women over 60 who are managing blood sugar, are making the same mistake they made with margarine in the 1980s. They're trusting a marketing campaign. They're buying the label. And the label is lying. The woman who reads "made with sunflower oil" and thinks she's making a healthy choice? She's pouring the most omega-6 dense, oxidation-prone, HNE-generating cooking oil on the market into her body. Every day. And nobody is correcting her. I had a conversation recently with a woman in our community, Diane, 68, from Oregon. Diane is meticulous about her health. She reads every label. She avoids processed foods. She exercises. She manages her blood sugar carefully. She's the kind of person who does everything right, and she was so proud of herself for switching to sunflower oil. She'd read an article that said sunflower oil was better than canola. She found a brand that said non-GMO and no artificial ingredients on the front. It had a pretty sunflower on the label. It cost $2 more than the canola, so she figured it must be better. When I explained the omega-6 ratio, 200 to 1, she went quiet. When I explained the HNE formation at cooking temperatures, she went quieter. When I told her the brand she bought was conventional sunflower oil, not the high oleic variety, she said, "So I've been paying more for something worse?" Yes, that's exactly what happened. The marketing worked. And here's the infuriating part. The high oleic version does exist. And it is meaningfully better. Much lower in linoleic acid, higher in oleic acid, more stable at heat. But the high oleic varieties are expensive and relatively rare in consumer packaging. The vast majority of sunflower oil on grocery shelves, and the vast majority used by food manufacturers, is the conventional type. The type with the 200 to 1 ratio. The marketing borrows the reputation of the high oleic version and applies it to the conventional version. Same sunflower on the label, same heart-healthy claim, completely different fatty acid profile. That's why sunflower oil is number 1. Not because it's necessarily worse than corn oil tablespoon for tablespoon, but because the marketing deception is active and growing right now, targeting exactly the people watching this video, and I refuse to stay quiet about it. All right, I've spent 37 minutes telling you what not to use. Now let me tell you what to use, because you still need to cook. You still need fat. Fat isn't the enemy. The wrong fat is the enemy. Here are 3 oils that are safe for cooking after 60, ranked from good to best. Safe oil number 3, avocado oil. High smoke point, about 520 degrees Fahrenheit. That means it remains stable at high cooking temperatures. Very low in omega-6. High in oleic acid, the same monounsaturated fat found in olive oil. Neutral flavor, so it works in almost any recipe. Works for sautéing, baking, roasting, even high-heat stir-frying. The downside? Cost. Avocado oil is more expensive than seed oils. A good quality bottle runs $8 to $12. But it lasts. A tablespoon at a time goes a long way. And when you factor in the medical costs of insulin resistance driven by cheap seed oils, avocado oil is the bargain. One caution, and this is important. A 2020 study published in Food Control tested 22 commercially available avocado oils. They found that a significant number were adulterated, mixed with cheaper oils like soybean or sunflower, or had gone rancid before their expiration date. Buy from reputable brands. Check for a harvest date or press date on the label. If it doesn't have one, be skeptical. Safe oil number 2, coconut oil. High smoke point, about 350 degrees, suitable for medium heat cooking. Predominantly saturated fat, which, yes, was demonized for decades. But the latest research has been far more nuanced. A meta-analysis published in the journal Circulation found that coconut oil raised HDL cholesterol, the protective kind, more than any other dietary fat tested. The relationship between coconut oil and cardiovascular risk is far less clear than the 1980s messaging suggested. And the blood sugar connection? Coconut oil contains medium-chain triglycerides, MCTs. These fats are metabolized differently from long-chain fats. They go directly to your liver for energy rather than being stored. Research published in the journal Diabetes has shown that MCTs improve insulin sensitivity in both animal and human models. Use coconut oil for medium heat cooking, sautéing vegetables, making eggs, baking. It adds a subtle flavor that works beautifully in most dishes. Safe oil number 1, extra virgin olive oil. And this isn't even close. Extra virgin olive oil is the most studied, most validated, most protective cooking fat in the history of nutritional research. The evidence is overwhelming. The Mediterranean diet, which uses olive oil as its primary fat source, is associated with reduced risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, stroke, cognitive decline, and all-cause mortality. In study after study, across populations, across decades, the mechanism? Olive oil is approximately 73% oleic acid, monounsaturated fat. It has a very low omega-6 content. It contains polyphenols, hydroxytyrosol, oleuropein, oleocanthal, that are powerful anti-inflammatory and antioxidant compounds. Oleocanthal, specifically, has anti-inflammatory properties comparable to ibuprofen. You're eating a natural anti-inflammatory every time you drizzle olive oil on your food. A landmark study, the pre-dimed trial, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, randomized over 7,400 participants at high cardiovascular risk to either a Mediterranean diet supplemented with extra virgin olive oil, a Mediterranean diet with nuts, or a low-fat control diet. The olive oil group showed a significant reduction in type 2 diabetes incidence compared to the control group. Not just cardiovascular benefit. Direct diabetes prevention. And the cooking concern? But doesn't olive oil lose its benefits when heated? Partially. The polyphenol content does decrease with heat. But the oleic acid, the primary fat, is very heat stable. A study published in the journal Food Chemistry found that extra virgin olive oil retained the majority of its antioxidant capacity after normal cooking temperatures and durations. It's less stable than avocado oil at very high heat, but for normal stovetop cooking, 300 to 375 degrees, olive oil performs beautifully. The rule: use extra virgin olive oil for low to medium heat cooking, drizzling, dressings, and finishing. Use avocado oil for high-heat applications like searing or roasting above 400 degrees. Use coconut oil when the flavor profile fits. Eggs, Asian dishes, baking. Now, buying olive oil requires some education. Because the olive oil market has a fraud problem. Studies have shown that a significant percentage of olive oils labeled extra virgin on American shelves are diluted with cheaper seed oils, are rancid, or don't meet the chemical standards for extra virgin classification. Here's how to protect yourself. Look for 4 things on the bottle. First, a harvest date, not a best buy date. A harvest date. Olive oil is best used within 18 months of harvest. If the bottle doesn't tell you when the olives were picked, the producer is hiding something. Second, a dark glass or tin container. Light degrades olive oil rapidly. If it's in a clear plastic bottle, that's a red flag. Third, a country of origin. Ideally a single country. Product of Italy, or product of Spain, or product of Greece. Avoid packed in Italy. That means the oil could have come from anywhere and was just bottled in Italy. Fourth, a certification seal. California Olive Oil Council, Australian Olive Association, European PDO PGI seals. These independent certifications actually test the oil for purity and quality. They're not perfect, but they're better than nothing. Yes, good olive oil costs more than canola. A quality bottle runs $10 to $15. But you use a tablespoon at a time. That bottle lasts a month. That's 50 cents a day. Less than your morning coffee, and it's the single most evidence-backed dietary intervention for metabolic health ever studied. 3 oils. Cover every cooking need. Destroy the inflammatory load your old oils were building. Stop. Before you swap your oils, there are 3 mistakes that will cancel the benefit entirely. Mistake 1, switching your cooking oil but continuing to eat packaged foods made with seed oils. This is the most common mistake I see. Someone buys a beautiful bottle of olive oil, cooks with it at home, feels great about the change, and then eats a bag of chips cooked in sunflower oil, opens a frozen dinner made with soybean oil, grabs a granola bar with canola oil in the ingredients. Your home cooking oil accounts for maybe 30 to 40% of the oil you consume. The rest comes from processed and restaurant foods. If you fix the 30% and ignore the 70%, the inflammatory load barely changes. The fix: start reading ingredient lists on everything you buy. If the ingredients include soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, or vegetable oil, put it back. Choose products made with olive oil, coconut oil, or avocado oil. They exist. They're becoming more common. But you have to look. And I want to give you a practical tip here. When you're in the grocery store, don't just look for the words olive oil on the front of the package. Flip it over. Read the actual ingredient list. Some products say made with olive oil on the front in big green letters. And then you read the back, and the first ingredient is canola oil, with olive oil listed 4th or 5th. They added just enough olive oil to legally put it on the front. The rest is the same seed oil you're trying to avoid. The front of the package is advertising. The back is truth. Read the back, every time. And one more thing. Restaurant food is where most people get the highest concentration of seed oils, because restaurants buy the cheapest oil available in bulk. If you eat out twice a week, those 2 meals could account for more omega-6 exposure than the other 5 days combined. This is especially true for fried foods, sautéed dishes, and anything cooked on a flat-top grill. The best strategy? Ask, what oil do you cook with? If the server doesn't know, ask the manager. If they say vegetable oil or soybean oil, order grilled, steamed, or baked options instead of sautéed or fried. You can't control the kitchen, but you can control what you order. Mistake 2, using olive oil but reheating it multiple times. This applies to any oil, but olive oil especially. Every time you reheat oil, the oxidation increases. The polyphenols degrade, the protective compounds disappear, and the inflammatory byproducts accumulate. Fresh oil every time. Period. Don't save the oil from last night's cooking. Don't reuse the pan oil. Pour it out. Wipe the pan. Start fresh. I know that feels wasteful. A tablespoon of olive oil costs about 15 cents. Your insulin sensitivity is worth more than 15 cents. Mistake 3. Combining healthy oil with high glycemic carbohydrates and thinking the oil cancels the spike. I've heard this one. I drizzle olive oil on my white rice, so the fat slows the sugar absorption. Partially true. Fat does slow gastric emptying, but it doesn't prevent the spike. It delays it. You still get the full glucose load. It just arrives 20 to 30 minutes later. If you're eating white rice, mashed potatoes, or white bread, olive oil is not a magic shield. The carbohydrate still needs to be addressed. Swap the starch and swap the oil. Both changes together produce the result. All right, I promised you a 10-second fix at the beginning. And here it is. Every morning, when you walk into your kitchen, before you make breakfast, before you cook anything, do this. pick up the bottle of seed oil, canola, vegetable, corn, sunflower, whatever you have, and pour it down the drain. Takes 5 seconds. Then pick up the bottle of extra virgin olive oil that you bought to replace it. Put it where the old oil was, front and center, eye level. First thing you see when you open the cabinet. 5 seconds out, 5 seconds in, 10 seconds total. That's the fix. And look, I know pouring out a full bottle of oil feels wrong. It feels wasteful. Your grandmother would never have done it. But your grandmother also wasn't dealing with insulin resistance, driven by industrial seed oils that didn't exist when she was cooking. You're not wasting food. You're removing a source of chronic inflammation from your kitchen, permanently, and replacing it with something that actively protects your blood vessels, your insulin sensitivity, and your brain. I had someone write to me after doing this exact thing. She said, I stood at my sink and poured out a bottle of canola oil I'd had for 8 months, and I felt ridiculous, like I was throwing away perfectly good food. But then she said something that stuck with me. The next morning, I made eggs in olive oil for the first time, and something shifted. Not in my blood sugar, not yet, in my head. I felt like I was finally cooking for my body instead of against it. That shift, that psychological shift, is worth everything. Because when you feel like you're in control of what goes into your body, you start making better decisions everywhere. The oil change leads to the bread change. The bread change leads to the yogurt change. One swap cascades into a whole new relationship with your kitchen. It all starts with 10 seconds. At your sink, tomorrow morning. The 10-second decision you make tomorrow morning determines what flows through your blood vessels for the next 30 years. Pour it out, put the olive oil where it was, and never look back. Here's the full plan. 4 steps. Simple. Permanent. Step 1. Tomorrow morning, the pour out. Take every bottle of canola, vegetable, corn, sunflower, and safflower oil in your kitchen. Pour them out. All of them. Don't save them for emergencies. Don't put them in the back of the cabinet. Pour them out. The decision needs to be irreversible for it to stick. Step 2. Tomorrow afternoon. The replacement trip. Go to the grocery store. Buy 3 things. 1 bottle of extra virgin olive oil. Look for a dark glass bottle, a harvest date on the label, and cold pressed, or first cold press on the bottle. 1 bottle of avocado oil. Look for refined if you want neutral flavor, unrefined if you want avocado flavor. 1 jar of coconut oil. Look for virgin or unrefined. Total cost, $20 to $30. These 3 bottles will last you 4 to 6 weeks. That's the same as 2 copays on a metformin prescription. Step 3, this week, the pantry audit. Go through your pantry, every box, every bag, every jar, read the ingredients. If it contains soybean oil, canola oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, or vegetable oil, set it aside. You don't have to throw it all out at once. Just become aware